Hello, it's Joey, and today I'm making pockets for a journal in a vintage style with collage. It's an idea that I've adapted from a journal topper from Artie Mays. I've turned it into a threaded pocket so you can bind it into a journal, and that means we can see this collage on both sides. I'll share my thought process and design tips as we go, and I'll also make it easy to use your own supplies. So get ready to use your scraps, hit the subscribe button, let's go. The key supplies that I'm using today are some really thin packing paper, and this came from an Amazon parcel. You could equally use something that they use in IKEA deliveries. Andrea used a brown paper bag, and that would be fantastic too. I'm also going to use a stamp, and I've chosen one with a little bit of detail so that I can put some pattern into the border we're putting at the top of this pocket. I'm using a stamp. Any sort of stamp will do. I've chosen something that's got a vintage design with some digits. I've got some gesso which I will use to make the paper here a little bit more robust. I'll make it matte and it will help the paint attach. But I realised when I started this project that I didn't have all of the items that Andrea has, and that's not really a surprise. I'm building it up and I want to use what I've got. So I am taking on the challenge today and sharing this with you to make this pocket with just what I have, adapting, substituting, and I'll share all my thought process as I select those substitute items so that you can make the best of your supplies too. We don't all have everything, and maybe we're managing a budget. So I will take you through what I chose as an alternative to make this pocket, and I've also adapted it from the journal topper that Andrea made to turn it into a pocket with collage on both sides. And to do that I've added this string, and this string will allow us to bind it into a journal, still appreciate both sides of the pocket, which actually has an extra one on the back here, and we're able to see this gorgeous little grungy detail that comes from the gessoing and the little use of paint sticks. So I'll show you how to do all of that. I'll show you how to add the thread. Maybe you want to do that on some of your other pockets that you want to add to a journal, and we'll do lots of lovely collage on the front and on the back using little images, some fabric, some stamping, really just having a lot of fun. I need to cut this down to size, and the size that I want is obviously something that would fit inside whichever journal I'm going to add it to. Typically I have journals with an A5 cover, so I'd want something that fits just within that, or I have them a little bit smaller, and this is because I've used pages from a lovely book. So ideally I want it to be obviously no bigger than the cover on these slightly smaller ones. So check out what size journal you want to add this to, and my measurements are going to be 11.5 centimetres by 17, so that's 11.5 by 17, which is 6.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and the measurement that I'm giving you is just for the piece of paper that we're going to use as the main piece of pocket. We will be adding a little border at the top which will make this a little bit taller, so the measurements you want to use must allow for a centimetre or two of additional height to the pocket so that it doesn't extend above the top. And with this size, for me, that feels absolutely perfect. So I'm going to just fold this and trim it down so that it will form the base of the pocket. This edge seems to be relatively neat, so I think I'll use this piece here. Go to about there. And one of the reasons that I like tearing, apart from the fact that, as Tina Shabby Dabby Doodah says, it's kind of quicker, and why do we need to get the trimmer out every time? I think what it starts to add is some of that vintage grungy feel. Some of the ways that I really enjoyed making that pocket, so what I really got out of it was the sense that I was doing something new. I like learning, but also that I was really building up this set of layers using something that turned into a vintage style pocket. So ripping is the first step, and I need that to be 11.5, so I'm going to just make a mark and fold it over at 11.5. And I don't need this extra flap. So now I have the basics of a pocket. I have the middle of the torn piece here on the left hand side, and I have an opening at the bottom, the side and the top. And what we're going to do is distress this material, make it more robust, add a bit of colour. I'm going to collage on the top, we'll add a pocket to the back, we'll sew around it, although you don't have to have a sewing machine to do this. You can add decorative lines that look like stitching, and we're going to punch a border and put that at the top. So I need a little bit of protection for this as I add gesso and colour to this paper. So I need some form of brush. I've got a nice big one here, so plenty of bristle to make things quicker. I've got my water and my tub of gesso. So this is just a large tub that I've had for some time. It was £5 from a shop called The Works in the UK. Not sure what sort of gesso you use, or even if you make your own. I have seen videos where people make their own. And what I'm going to do is add some water, add gesso directly to this, and I'm also going to use my paint stick. Now this is the alternative to using an ink pad, and I'm sure a lot of you have a sort of walnut coloured ink pad with a lovely distress ink in it, and that could be used definitely, but I don't have one of those. You might laugh, I don't have one of those. So I really wanted to just have a go at using my own supplies, using what I have. So I am using these. I used them last week on, I'll show you, like when I made some little index cards, and I used them around the border, and I'm going to bring a similar technique into this pocket today. So I am going to carry on using this and also the orange one, just to get a little bit of interesting colour going on. So plenty of gesso, plenty of water. Don't be too scared about putting too much water on. I'm not being particularly tidy in the way that I'm putting it on. In fact, I think as I watched Andrea, there was lots of dibbing and dabbing going. And in a minute what I'll do is add some of that paint. When I put the pocket together, I do want to make sure that I see a little bit more of this back of the pocket, of this distressed piece of Amazon packaging. So I'm going to particularly take care to add a border that I keep. In fact, let me show you. Andrea didn't show the back of her item because it's a journal topper. I want to show, it looks a bit like stone. I want to show this distress as part of the pocket, and I'm also going to make sure that we use a bit of the visible front. So I will be putting almost a frame around this to begin with. So I've got some gesso on there, and at this point I'm going to say it's all a little bit scary. It's wet, it's very delicate, so let's just have a go with our brown paint stick. And one of the techniques I've started playing with is literally dipping the paint stick into water, not just getting the paper wet, but in order to keep some of that fluidity, to keep the pigment really loose and the medium spreading, I'm getting that paint stick wet. I think these are really good value actually. I'm going to have so much fun. I think in the summer I'll have a play with some of the other colours. So in the pack that I bought, I got lots and lots of lovely colours, and they look rather vibrant and maybe not what you'd use in a vintage item in your journaling, but I've actually been playing and finding some more uses. So this really bright red one, I had a go at doing an index card and giving a border with red toned down with the brown. So mixing them up was a lot of fun. This is something I might have a go at filming. If you're interested, let me know. So let's give our little bit of paper some care and attention. I'm going to spread out that brown, and I do want quite a bit on the outside on the frame, because I'm going to collage in the middle on the front, so I'm not too worried about this piece here, but I do want it to be visible right, bottom and left, and I do want it to be visible right, bottom, left, and more so in this top third. So on the back, let's make sure we've got a little bit of that going on, and if I'm feeling daring, let's just add a little bit of the orange. It's always fun to mix, isn't it? No specific formula. Just making sure I've got plenty where the frame of a picture would be. And that is making a little bit of Amazon packaging turn into what's going to be a lovely pocket. It will be more robust because we've got the gesso on it and it's already completely different colour. So what we need to do is either let that dry or dry it off, and while we do that I'm going to make the little border here that will stick on behind the collage. So to make the border at the top of the pocket just here, I'm going to use the spare front page from a book that I've used to make some of my envelope journals. So we're going to use a punch to get a pretty design across the top. You could even rip, if you don't have a punch, you could rip roughly, maybe a couple of times. I've just chosen the closest I've got to the one that Andrea used. This has got a flower design and it punches quite crisply. So one of the reasons I've chosen this punch is I do get a very detailed and neat design at the top, and I felt that that went with the rest of this vintage feel. So I'm using this piece of paper. It's a gorgeous colour to begin with and it's relatively thick. I'm going to colour it first, let it dry or dry it off, and then I'll punch it. And the reason I'm doing it in that order is I felt that if I punched it first and then coloured it, it might just overly tear and obscure the clarity of the punched holes. So that was my thinking. So again, what I'm going to do is wet this just at the edge. I'm going to add a bit of gesso to make it not just a little bit thicker, but to add some of that matte feel, which has that sense of ageing, I think. And we are going to see that sticking out at the top. So it's good to be able to start to feel that distressed, aged feeling, that visual starts to come out in some of the detail, and it is the detail that matters as we put these elements together. So there's a bit of gesso on the end, and again I'm going to use my brown paint stick, keeping it wet, and as I add this paint stick, there is something magical happens with this piece of paper which I really like, and it's the reason I chose it again. I don't know if you can see, but it has these lines in the paper, and as I've added some of that brown paint stick, you start to see those little lines, the undulations in the beautiful old paper coming out. So this paint is bringing out some of the best features of the paper. And when I played at making this pocket for the first time, I just thought that was one of the fun features that appeared. So I thought that would be worth explaining. When you're choosing papers from your collection, maybe you can see if there's something with a little bit of texture that will show a bit more once you've punched it and then added some paint. So I wanted it to be relatively dark brown, so I have added quite a bit of my paint stick. No talent required, dibbity dab. If you need to, stick your finger in the water and just move that around. The amount that I need is obviously the width of the pocket, whatever size yours is, and I've got about 3 centimetres depth. So I need enough to stick out at the top, by a little bit, by maybe 1 centimetre, and a good amount of 2 centimetres, so that it's quite firm when we adhere it to the front of the pocket, and that will go behind the collage, so we're covering up some of the joining, and I also think visually that's really nice. So again, what I'll do is dry this off and then I'll punch it. So I've dried it off with my heat gun, and as I was drying it, I have just added just a tiny bit more of that paint stick. So when the paper was almost dry, I just took the stick and wiggled over it. And what it does is pick up some of the medium in a different way. So rather than it melting into the gesso and water, we get a bit more of this stronger pigment and thicker medium, thicker paint on the paper. And I just felt that that was another layer of something interesting to add. So let's just punch down the side so that we get the border to add to our pocket. So here's my little border. I've managed to make a mess of one of the punches, and I thought I'd show you what I'm doing. So not everything goes right every time, as we know. You can see I've lost the detail of petals inside, but when I thought about adding it to the pocket, I realised that I actually really like the distress sense, the imperfection that that gives us. So I am not worried at all. I'm going to keep that, and I'm going to add that with lost petals to the front of our little pocket. So folding back over, remembering that we've created a little bit of a frame with the paint sticks and the gesso and the water, and on the back we've got just a bit more of that distress coming down the page, because we'll see that when we add the little pocket at the back. We're going to see the back of this. What I want to do is add this to the front on here. So I need just a bit of glue, and I'll put it on, and then we'll just snip off the excess at the edges. Trying to get it straight. Let's have a look at the back. Down here, and then taking off this side. Let's turn it over to do that, a bit easier to see. Ta-da! Just tear that off. So we've got a little crown at the top, we've got lovely crinkly paper, always good, and we're ready to add some extra collage to the front and the back, but we're also going to add this thread. We mustn't forget to do that, so that you can add it to your journal and then get to see the pleasure of both sides. To do that, I need a piece of paper or thin cardstock, and I'm going to add a little bit of extra strength to the paper and then add string so that we can put this on to the pocket in a particular way and bind it into our journal. So I need a piece of cardstock that is big enough to add that strength, but not so big that it makes the pocket really, really thick. So what I'm going to do is take a piece that is less than the height of the pocket, maybe by 1 centimetre or 2, no more. And I'm just going to tear that down and then fold it in half lengthwise. And all I'm doing is creating a little bit of extra strength in a spine. This is going to go in here, and then we're going to make holes in it, put the string through. So what I want to do now is just basically glue this in. So I'll put glue on the back to begin with, going to the edges with this one, unlike the collaging that we've done on our lovely little collage cards recently. Put that in, make sure it's absolutely in the fold, and also try to get it relatively in the centre, top to bottom. Let that sit down, and then if needs be, just go to the edges and add another dot of glue. And the reason that I'm doing this is when the pocket is closed, so when the front is sewn or glued onto the back and you put things in, you don't want it to get underneath here and get stuck. So I'm just making sure that on this back piece that's all nicely attached down. It also means I think it's sensible to use either thin cardstock or paper, because again, when the pocket's closed, if you had really thick cardstock in here, adding the strength, again you'd have more to butt up against and get in the way when you're putting things in. So I'm going to fold that over. We know that it's absolutely snug and neat in the spine, in the fold, and then I'll add glue to this, and then I'm going to fold the front flap onto it. And the reason I do it this way is to try to get the neatest fold and not have a problem with stretch and positioning of this top piece. So I'll check again that these little corners are down. That one seemed to work a bit better. So that is the extra strength added to the spine. I just need to add some holes and then some string. When this pocket is added to a journal, so this is one I did in another collaboration with Andrea actually, we want it to sit snugly so that it doesn't peep out the top or the bottom. So I typically add string and do an figure of 8 binding method to add my signatures. So I'm going to mirror that in the positioning of the holes on this pocket. So I want to initially find a midpoint, and it's the midpoint from the absolute top with your border to the bottom, not just the midpoint of your piece of grungy cardstock and paper. So I want a midpoint between here and the absolute top, and I want to make a mark on my little extra bit of spine to show where that midpoint is. So this has now grown to 18 centimetres, so I am going to put a little mark at 9. And then when I make my journals, I know that I typically have 6 centimetres between each of these holes. So I'm also going to then measure 6 centimetres above and below that little first dot. So I'll take my string and my needle, in fact take my needle first, and pop a hole through the pocket markers, through those little dots of pencil. That one just fits on. I really should have, by eye, moved this up a bit so that that wasn't quite so much at the edge, but we learn every time, don't we? We learn every time. I've got 3 holes 6 centimetres apart. The middle one is in the middle of the height of this total pocket. And now what I need to do is add some string and do it in a particular way which makes it easy to bind into a journal when you come to make one. The length to begin with, I'm going to give myself plenty. Let's go for 1, 2, 3, and as I say, 1 for the pot, just to be careful. We can always cut it off later. And I'm going to start with my thread going from the outside in. I'm going to start at the top, just thread that through. I'm going to go back in through the middle, I'm going to go back from the outside through the bottom hole and bring it back up. And really I can see it's not ideal where I put that dot, so the learning really is make sure that you bring this piece of robustness a little bit further up so that it will have space at the ends to put your dots and your holes. But I'm going to carry on. Nothing's perfect, is it? Let's just keep going. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fine. Go from the inside out. So I've threaded a little bit more through just to even it up, and that means we've now got something that allows us to add this to a journal so that we'll be able to see the back and the front when we've done some beautiful collage. I've got some papers here, so this is my little folder of collagey bits and pieces, so I might pull from that in a minute. I think I'll also use maybe some actual book pages that I pulled out when we made the altered book, so that's one of the projects I have ongoing at the moment. I'm also going to try using some of the grungy papers that I didn't get around to using when I did my collage the other week. So I really like these. These are nice grungy patterns that I pulled out, and they deserve a bit of use, I think. Might have a go with those. And the other thing I wanted to show you is some beautiful little uncoloured digis that Tracy Fox has recently issued. These are kind of candidates for sticking on the collage as well. And all I've been doing with these is using that similar technique of getting water on the page, playing with my paint sticks. I think on this one I used the brown again, washed over it, and then I've sprayed it with mica, so I've got some gold splatters. This one I had to go with more yellows and golds and a little bit of teal, and I don't mind that the ink has run. So these are the sorts of things you could have a play with. This one I did with the bubble wrap and a sponge, so I just dabbed and got more texture with this one. These are the sorts of things that you could cut out and have ready to decorate your pocket. Maybe we'll have a go at using those in another project. Let me know if you're interested in seeing how I make them. I also think that just lovely. I love it. Let's get going with our decoration. The technique I'm going to suggest for this is to start with getting the corners done, like we did when we did Mr. Top Hat Man and collaged this in our New Year collaboration. I want to define this space as if it is a picture to begin with. I also don't need to collage right in the middle because I'm not going to see that. I'm going to cover it up with some extra pieces. So I don't really have too much of a formula for this other than enjoy yourself, and let's start with some of those corners. With this one again, the technique that I'm going to suggest is putting your glue in the middle and not at the edges, and you may know this technique that I've suggested by now, and it works because it allows you to add under and over at a later point and make the page appear to have more layers and be more interesting. So I'm getting a corner piece up here. I'm not too worried that it isn't a straight line at the top. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going over the border of, I'm going over the edge of this border that we attached, and I'm choosing moderately sized pieces. So not teeny tiny, not completely filling with one piece. I don't even mind if it's not upright. Just going to get some of these down. And where I'm positioning them is with enough space at the side that I still see this distressed style paper that we coloured. So we're going to see the beauty of all of the work we did with wetting that paper and adding some paint. So I'm literally just picking up little pieces. Some of this will get covered up, and that's absolutely fine, but some of it won't, and I'm not going to waste any of my little scraps in the middle. So that one can go underneath there, maybe underneath that one. And what I've got on that one, for example, is still a wiggly edge, but enough space at the left of it that I can see the brown. So it doesn't even need to be a straight line on the pieces of collage that you fit in. That would look nice on the left there, wouldn't it? Yeah, I really like that. Might be a bit too big. We'll see when we try and put it in. Yeah, I need to take that down a bit. Stick that under there. Under that one. And you can see how quickly and easily it just comes together. I think I want some book page on here. Oh, I've got a bit of music paper. Absolutely fantastic. I want the notes, so if I have a piece like this, I don't want too much of the blank vanilla to be showing, so I'll tear off, and maybe this could go at the bottom. I think that's absolutely perfect, very happy with that. So how big do I need it to be? Possibly taking off a bit on this side. So there isn't really an order in which I'm working around this page. If I pick a piece of paper up, then I just see where it might go. And I haven't torn that down enough, but it's easy to just fold that back where I want it and maybe tear that off. So how are we doing? Does it look okay? So a front pocket that went wrong. Quick rippity rip. So maybe something like that there. I think so. This is a really nice aged piece. I can tell by feeling it, it's got a delicate essence about it. It's definitely old. And all I need, I think, is a tiny bit more up here. I think that. Maybe a bigger piece. Ooh, ledger paper. Right, solution. Yeah, I think we're going to get that in there. Don't want just want a tiny piece up there. I like the red lines, so I've ripped off the spare bit. I'll get that in. So I have pretty much the paper collage pieces done. The other thing I want to do before I sew around this is add some texture in the way of fabric. So I am going to add a sentiment and mat that onto fabric, and I like an echo, I like a degree of repeat. This speaks to this. So I'll have a little bit of a piece out here, I think. Let's see if we can find something. These are just old net curtains which I stained. I had a play with fabric paint and I literally just wet and diluted the fabric paint and played around dabbing it on. Sometimes I just sit at my desk and play and see what appears, and then you might use those items in some way in your project. You don't always need to know how you're going to use things once you start. So this will go just on the front down here, I think, and the positioning, I think we'll glue it on. I'm going to put it over this seam where these two come together, and it's also fortuitously roughly 2/3 of the way down. What I don't want is it halfway down on the right, I want it down here. So I'll just glue that on. I've folded it over, add a bit of glue, and it will be put in a more permanent place when I come to sew round it. So I'm happy with that as the front. What we want to do is add a pocket to the back. So I will add the final detail on top here once I've sewn around this, but I want to add a pocket on the back here so that we can add these extra goodies. To do that, I am going to treat myself to a page from Charles Dickens' Pickwick Papers, which is very old, but it was falling to bits. So it's gorgeous paper. It's smooth and has something special about it. The pages they're not even. I mean, look at that. It's a book from the 1850s, I think this one. Is it late 1800s, this version? And you can see these gorgeous printed plates, which I will take out and do something with. Any suggestions for what to do with these, let me know. I've been collecting them and putting them in a box, so I do have a few now. So I'll take one of these pages out, being very careful. Another gorgeous image. And this page is perfect for a couple of reasons. It's strong enough, it's not one of those which is going to fall to bits. It's obviously wide enough to go on my pocket, and the smooth nature of the paper means I'm going to be able to easily add just a little bit more water, gesso and colour. So I'm going to tear it down to the right size first and then colour it, and again I'm going to work in thirds. I'll place that on with, again, enough so I continue to see some of that border. I like the rough edge, so I think I will make a mark and tear up, and I want this to be about 2/3 of the height of the pocket. So I'm literally going to just fold that over and give it a bit of a tear. Uneven would be fine, and tear off up to the pencil mark. And this gives me a pocket that I'm going to sew on the back. So when I go around this, I'll make sure that I sew into this just enough. And I'm going to firstly add a bit more water and some paint. So I'll wet it, take my brown paint stick, and this is what I've been doing on that other little digi that I showed you. Rub the paint onto the paint stick, and we get just a little bit of something more textured. I think I will mix it around a bit, make it look more aged, add a bit of yellow. You can see you can just get carried away with these techniques. So it's not too wet. I'll just dry that off. And this is going to be stuck on the back because I do want to give it extra strength. I do want it to hold quite well, and I'm not 100% then going to rely on the stitches to hold the pocket on. I think the stitches for the back pocket here are as much for a bit of that cosmetic feel, a bit of the how it looks. So that can go on there. And I'm thinking I just want this to be a bit less even. I'm going to make it a bit more, let's just make it a bit more uneven, take that off. That just looks better. So I've got the pocket on the back stuck down. It does need some extra detail, and we're going to add some little images. What I am going to do is just sew around this, and what I will do is add sewing in a running stitch starting at the top right, work my way down, and to add some interest I'm adding a little bit of zigzag, which I will do in a strong dark thread, work around the rest of it with running stitch, and I'm doing a little bit of double sewing at the top where I begin and at the end just for strength. So we're all ready to go. I'll start with a simple running stitch and then do a little bit of zigzag. Changing to zigzag. Back to running. Let's see how we're done. We've got just a simple stitch down the side, across and up, so that we still have a gap at the top. For the pocket we're going to add an envelope and maybe a tag in there. I've gone over the little bit of fabric, so that really does attach it, and miraculously we seem to have been able to go just on the inside of this piece of paper, this pocket, so it gives it a bit more strength. I'm going to use a couple of little pieces from this DigiKit. This is from Andrea, so this is from Artie Mays, and I'm going to have a go at cutting out this beautiful little card with alphabet on. Text is always great to incorporate into a design, I think. I really love it. And I'm going to have one of these little characters too. And this is one of my favourite butterflies. I absolutely love this one. The teals in it, it's just stunning. It's the shape, it's the design, it's even the size is really useful. So I will cut out those, but there's another kit I just wanted to bring to your attention because I think it works perfectly with this. This is a page from Andrea's Vintage Days kit, and I also think if you had any of these on the back of this pocket, that would work perfectly too. And in particular this one here, because the colours really go with the paint sticks. So when you're thinking about which images to add, yes, it's great to think about what the image is, but I also have a think about what the colour tones are, and they may vary from printer to printer. I don't know whether every printer is consistent. So that one at the top left here, this is from Vintage Days, I think that would go beautifully on there as well. But let's just have a go at cutting a couple of these out and adding them on. So I've got my little man, I've got my alphabet, and I've also got a little piece here, a little icon that I want to just tuck in here. And I think what I want to do on this one is take off the corners. The reason I chose this one is it has that redness in the pattern. So this is very rusty red, which goes so well with the grunge that we've added to the back of the pocket. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue that one in. I want that to be just tucking out there, and I'm going to add stitches, very tiny little cheeky ones, to bring this together, because we've already got stitches around here. And on here I'm going to add my little, in fact I think I'll add this to begin with, and I'm also going to round the corners on that so it's not too harsh. And I'll get that on. That can go up there. And now's the time to have fun with one of our stamps. I need to take the cleanliness of this off. I need to take that down. I'll use my ginger Adirondack pad. That feels like it should be enough of a brown to blend with some of this. So I'm just going lightly. I don't mind going a couple of times, but I want a light effect there because this is a background piece. This is going behind this. So I don't want this to shout out too loudly, but I didn't want it to be clean. And then I'm going to add the little man down here, but I'm going to put him onto fabric. So I'll just let's cut a little piece off our grungy old curtain. That will fit on there. Just before I add him, I'll give him some stitches too. So just adding some little stitches. He can have square corners. We don't want everything to be rounded. It's the contrast that really helps. And I want that to stick out at the top, but not be completely around it. Press that down. I think I'll add a bit more behind here. That is good. I'm going to add a few little sequins just to finish off the back. And I have these rolls of sequins that I bought. I think they're Christmas decorations. I have them in a number of different colours. I also found them in glorious limey green and red. This one is red and some sort of holographic whitey pink. So it's fantastic little extras to add to your design. And I want to make the eye look across the whole of the pocket. So I'm going to add a sequin at the top here, and then just on the corners of the little guy. It's really easy as a way of creating a pocket, this. So thank you, Andrea, for your creative designs. To finish the collage on the front, I'm going to start by adding a little tag, and this is one that I've just printed out. It's not real sewing, so that's printed into the tag here. And I'm just going to add that on the right, and this is why I didn't worry too much about the centre of the collage. And I'm adding it so that I still get to see that sewing that we did, both the straight and the zigzag. So we're building up the interest, we're building up the detail. So I'm using a bit of an old envelope. So this was something that housed a lovely card from Christy Bittleston, I think. Always great to use up the little things that you have. So I'll have a little bit of this, and I also want to add another layer of fabric. So something that Andrea did was lots and lots of layering. I think in producing this collage on the front, I've made it simpler than Andrea's because I'm just learning, I'm just building up my knowledge of techniques. I think I will add that behind, so I'll just stick that on. So I've got envelope and old tissue, and I'm going to have that on there, and I think that's possibly just a little bit too heavy. Just going to take it down a little bit up here. That's better. So I will attach that, and I want to still see plenty of the tag, and I don't want it to stick out too far. So that's great. And the final thing I want to add on the front here, before I adhere beautiful little butterfly and a sentiment, is some more texture by way of stamping. Yep, seems to be enough. I'm going to add butterfly, absolutely gorgeous, maybe with some stronger glue. I'm going to position that so that it overlaps these edges here. I don't mind seeing a little bit of the fabric behind. I'll just slide it across because, remembering this is a pocket that's going to go in a journal, I don't want too much sticking out the left hand side, so that can actually come across here. Okay, and I'm keeping the wings up. I've got a sentiment that I've cut out. I've backed onto a bit of darker paper, a bit more of my fabric. Let's bring those together. I think we need sayings like this at the moment, nothing is impossible. And maybe I will just make that a bit shorter, because I want the eye to focus on this little indentation that I've cut in. And again, using the fabric behind as a mat, I really think brings your eye to reading the sentiment. And I want that to be just slightly underneath the butterfly. And I don't have another of these wax seals. This was on the back of the envelope. So let's just improvise. Let's add something as some detail down here. We've got some sequins on the back, so maybe what we can add is just 3 here. I need just something to fill in that space. And all we need to do is choose some ephemera to put in the top, so maybe a tag or two, or an envelope. I've got videos on my channel for making these, they're really, really easy. So why don't we add a tag or two into this one. I think that one went in there. Just fill it with all of the lovely bits and bobs that you've made and that you really enjoy putting together. And this is my pocket for a journal in a vintage style with collage. Hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this, and check out my playlist where I make lots more ephemera for journals, and my playlist for making junk journals as well. I'll be making these soon, so definitely subscribe and come back to see that, and I hope to see you soon.